What is going on, everyone? Welcome to another episode of Yammy Noob. If you've tuned in today, you're likely on the fence between an ICE motorcycle, that's short for internal combustion engine, or perhaps an EV. We've been talking a lot about these lately because they are changing the game. Electric motorcycles are coming, and there's nothing we can do about it, right, Spite?
Yeah, no, this is basically the coming apocalypse for all those folks who are like, you can take my internal combustion engine out of my cold, dead hands.
I'm one of those people. I am. I'm going to be completely honest. I'm one of those people. Big shout out to our sponsor for today's videos, Flying Eyes. We'll tell you more about them later on in the show, but let's get started. All right, Spite, you mentioned something earlier that I thought was a really fun little tidbit. At one point, both of these motorcycles were sold on dealerships at the same time.
Yeah,
which is really
not
crazy.
Too long ago, which is wild. So 2018, 2019, you were selling Sportsters right beside the Livewire when it was still the Harley-Davidson Livewire. Now it's the Harley-Davidson Livewire 1.
Yeah.
Because Harley-Davidson owns the company. But yeah, you could buy these literally right next to each other, which blows my mind because you're looking at, you know, tech from the mid-'80s right next to absolute bleeding edge technology, which whether or not you think EVs are bad or whether or not you think that they're, you know, boring or whatever, you have to admit that they are the cutting edge of motorcycling technology right now.
Yeah, I mean, you think about the development that has happened in these bikes in the last 10 years, there's a lot of R&D being poured into it, whereas these old school internal combustion engines, they've had 100+ years of development, and they've started getting to refine to the point of kind of a smooth, polished ball, you know? Like you look at stuff like your Fireblades, your Ducatis, how much more can we really get, you know what I mean? Versus something like that is actually much more, you know, new and cutting edge, like you said.
Yeah, we've reached that point of diminishing returns on naturally aspirated engines. We just can't squeeze more power out of them right now because there's thermal inefficiencies, there's noise and emissions reductions, there's so much going on that is going to hamper the progress of the internal combustion engine going forward. Whereas these guys, this is such a nascent technology, which the irony being back in the day, circa 1800s, 1900s, people thought this was the future and that internal combustion was dirty, nasty stuff.
I mean, who could blame them? It's got one single moving part. It's static right there. It doesn't leak a bunch of fluids. Back when the internal combustion engine was developed, it was a mess of oil and gas and, you know, all kinds of other stuff spewing out of it. People are like, why would you want that when you can have this?
Yeah, exactly. And this now, as a result of only being around, I mean, I can think of a couple of battery vehicles from early in my life, but it's really been in the 2010s that we've started to see these things become things that a normal person can go buy.
Yeah.
You know, not just for early adopters in Silicon Valley. And the leaps that we're seeing in the pricing structure and the recharging ability and all of that stuff.
It's happening fast.
It's happening fast. It's really fast.
So the first thing you gotta know is an electric motorcycle features a gigantic battery. So when you look right over here, all these fins, those are cooling fins for this giant battery. That's actually not the thing that powers a motorcycle, it's where all the energy is stored so that the motor can turn it into power at the rear wheel. So it has just one moving part, and it's right at that motor right there.
Yep. Very, very, very mechanically simple. However, when you start looking at if you have to repair it, if you're not an electrical engineer, good luck.
Yeah, technologically complicated, mechanically simple, which is the complete opposite of the traditional ICE engine. We've chosen our giveaway Sportster 1200 over here. Click the links down below to find out how you can get entered to win this fantastic motorcycle. We're giving it away, but this is our definition of a very simple, you know, motorcycle. This is an air-cooled 1200cc engine that barely makes any power. It's not very complicated, air-cooled, as I mentioned, and mechanically complicated, but technologically very simple.
Yes.
Very simple. There's a small little brain inside of this machine controlling the air-to-fuel ratios, and that's about it, honestly.
Squeeze, bang, blow.
Yep, that's all you get.
That's how those things work. That's one of the things about the ICE engine, because it's been around for so long in a known quantity. We have seen so much development out of it. We've seen a lot of cool versions of it.
different configurations, different sizes, different characteristics, forced induction. I mean, all kinds of fun stuff with ICEs that one day we'll probably see with electrics.
And that's probably one of the biggest drawbacks for these right now, is because they're so nascent, because there's not a lot of variety going on. They all feel more or less the same.
Yeah.
There are a lot of things, like we actually have a video coming out tomorrow that's going to do a deep dive on this versus the Zero, so stay tuned for that if you are into that sort of thing. This bike has a lot going on to make it feel more normal, more alive, but you never have to worry about something like that with an ICE bike. They're always alive. This is one of the only bikes that's doing that right now.
Yeah. The Livewire with its haptic feedback gives you a little bit more energy and pizzazz, but as Spite said, they're all functionally identical at this point. There's a big battery and a motor that spins. There's not really much you can do to make them feel different, whereas, you know, if you crank over a Ducati versus cranking over a Sportster, man, that's a totally different riding experience. And that, to me, again, as a dyed-in-the-wool internal combustion engine apologist, that to me is the fun of it. You can get bikes that all feel a little bit different flavors. It feels like you're at a big buffet and you can just start picking and choosing what you want.
Yeah.
You know, versus these, it's all the same bland food at the cafeteria.
Oh, hey, didn't see you there. Well, you know what? We're doing a lot of talking about electric bikes and ICE bikes right now, but they're both motorcycles. And when you're out on your bike, you don't want to be staring at the sun, being all blinded. That's why Flying Eyes is the best choice for you. Flying Eyes sunglasses are the choice of everybody here on the channel, and that is because they have these nice thin frames that fit nicely between your head and your helmet. There's no pressure points while you're riding, and they are super duper comfortable for an all-day ride. Anybody who wears sunglasses in your helmet, they know exactly what it feels like to have the stem pushing into your temples after hour 2 or 3 on the bike. No more with Flying Eyes. Click that link down below and check out all the different frame styles and lens styles and all the good stuff that Flying Eyes has to offer, and get yourself a pair you're not going to want to go back to old school sunglasses after you try one of these. Big shout out to Flying Eyes for supporting this video. Now let's get back to the sad conversation of the death of the ICE engine. So we've done a lot of dogging on this one so far, but let's talk a little bit about some of the positives here.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot to like in this package, actually. Especially if you are somebody who is not maintenance minded, because these things, man alive, are they easy to maintain. You don't have to worry about oil changes. You don't have to worry about having to get your valves checked. You don't have to worry about a whole bunch of stuff on this motorcycle. Yeah, you do have to worry about your powertrain. You do have to worry about some of the brakes, but that's on every single motorcycle. The list of stuff you need to check on this bike, very short.
Yeah, with this machine, I mean, other than maybe some of the technological components breaking down, mechanically speaking, not much is going to happen to this motorcycle. It's going to run basically the same for a long time, whereas any kind of litany of things can happen on this machine over here. You could have the valves go out of time. Well, I guess not this one because it's hydraulically controlled,
yeah, you got
right?
the lifter.
You got the lifter. Yeah, you got the lifter. So this one wouldn't. But on another motorcycle, you'd have a bunch of other issues. The motor could have problems. You could have oil leaks. It's just a messier, more maintenance-heavy experience. A lot of people enjoy maintaining their bikes. You among them, like wrenching on them and maintaining them. But for a lot of folks, if you want a clean, simple experience, an electric bike could really do that for you.
Yeah.
That's definitely a big positive in their camp. I think a big one for people is, you know, also fuel.
Yes.
This thing, just plug it in and it'll kind of keep going every day as long as it has battery charging on it. You don't have to worry about going to the gas station. You don't have to worry about, you know, fuel costs. Electricity costs are pretty stable as of right now anyways. But yeah, that's a nice positive for it.
I will say on that note though, you know, you're not seeing this because of the way we have it framed up, but that wall over there, we have general contractors in here building out a wall, and they had to turn off a circuit in this space, and I was plugged into an outlet that's right there, and I thought it was on, but it wasn't. And this thing takes 11 hours to charge from 0 to empty on your standard house outlet. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna plug it in, and it's gonna be good to go. I didn't realize that the circuit was off, and it just sat. So it literally didn't charge at all last night.
Yeah.
And now it's still at like 50% charge. So that's a bit of a bummer.
Yeah.
If you lose power, you're just not gonna be able to charge your bike.
Yeah. It really makes you think that you need to have all the infrastructure around these electric vehicles to make sure that they run. Like, for example, if you had solar panels on top of your home and other sort of, self-sufficient energy systems you could then put into your bike or your car, or whatever the EV is, then that could work. But man, you can get gas at any corner. You know what I mean? Gas is always readily available because of the giant supply chain for it. So one downside to EVs, as we mentioned, is the cost of entry. Now, these motorcycles are a nascent technology, and so the actual price to get into these things is pretty high.
Yes.
It's still pretty dang high, and this bike actually received a big price cut, which was good, but relatively speaking, it is still very high to get an electric motorcycle versus, some old Sportster like this.
Yeah, so this is $22,700, if I remember correctly. The correct number will be down below. That right there, 12 grand. So it's and we
That's
dog
brand
on
new.
that for brand new, and also being hilariously overpriced.
Yeah, you can get a Ninja 400 for $5,000.
Yeah, so the amount of money that you need to spend to get into this, even if you have rebates, even this, even that, you're still gonna have to fork over $22,700 first, and then get reimbursed for it later. So you're gonna take out a big note on something like that. However, I do think that the cost of a vehicle like this may amortize more quickly than something like a more expensive, like let's say you get a $15,000 ICE motorcycle. I feel like you're gonna break even a little bit faster on this guy.
Yeah, I could see that. But for a lot of folks, $22,000 is family car money. Let's be totally honest. It's a ridiculous amount of money to spend on a motorcycle unless you're buying like a super fancy fun toy you want to ride around a lot. It's a bit much. I think the point at which this is going to kind of change for people is when these become, not this one specifically, but an electric motorcycle is under $10,000, gets 100 miles of range, and it can be charged within 2 or 3 hours.
Yes.
Then all of a sudden people are like, well, that's actually pretty good, you know? But I think as motorcyclists, the riding experience is very important. And no matter what we talk about, the pros and cons of the analytical side of things, like, oh, this doesn't use gasoline and blah, 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 motorcycling is an emotional experience at the end of the day. And how do you feel riding an electric versus an ICE?
Oh man, there's nothing for me quite like when you first start up a Sportster and it just like shakes and rumbles. It's really cool. And I like the feeling of, the bike shaking and wiggling underneath me. It feels alive. I'm trying to struggle to think what this could do that would make it more immediately visceral, because this package is still really good. Everything in there it's a good package, but it's just not what we've come to expect. It's like, how guitarists still use tube amps because it's so out of date, but it's what everybody knows, right?
There's a certain charm with a tube that you wouldn't get with the digital modeling amp, right? It's different. And that's how these feel, right? This is the digital modeled amp, and this is the tube amp, and there's something about plugging it into the tube, and you have to turn it on, wait for it to warm up, like it's different. I don't know, for me too, like I get on a real motorcycle, I say real, an ICE motorcycle.
That's a real bike over there.
Slip of the tongue there. It could be a Sportster, it could be a Ducati, it could be a Triumph, it could be a Kawasaki, whatever it is. Just that feeling of flipping the key and then starting it up and hearing the exhaust, and I always give a little bit of a blip on the throttle and just feeling it come alive, warming up a little bit. I love it. And it's hard for me to give that up and go over here, honestly. It's hard.
So who do you think, of existing motorcyclists out there, do you think that there's a contingent that would want to switch, or do you think that this is for new motorcyclists more so than the existing pack?
Man, I really think it's for new people getting into it. I have never met, and I'm sure someone in the comments will be there, but I've never met someone personally who owns ICE bikes and switched to an electric and is now only riding an electric motorcycle.
Yeah.
I do know some folks who own one electric bike and own other bikes. I don't know anybody who's made the switch. What about you?
Me neither. I don't know that I've ever heard of, at least with the people that I know, of anybody going out and being like, this is how I want to live my life now. Yeah. I'm sure that it is coming, but at least for now.
You make it sound like it's some alternative lifestyle. They approach you in some intervention style thing, like, this is how I'm going to live my life now. And it's like, okay. You know, they're a carpet salesman in New York City, right? There's some alternative lifestyle that they have now.
I mean, it's a coming. You know, the death knell of the ICE is sooner rather than later, or so it seems. But
it's like we were born at exactly the right and the wrong time. We're seeing the absolute golden age of it, the most crazy stuff all the time, and yet we're also going to see the complete death of it.
Yeah, this would be like sitting there, some like Saving Private Ryan-esque thing where we're going over, we're thinking about all the fun track days, all the trips we did, and then we look at what's in our garage and we rapidly age.
But guys, what do you think about internal combustion engines versus EV motorcycles? There's a lot to talk about, plenty of pros and cons. If you own an electric motorcycle, hit us up down below in the comments, let us know what you think about it. If you're like me and maybe a diehard internal combustion engine guy, let us know as well. Why are you a diehard guy? For me, it's the sound, the exhaust, the thrill of the engine. I don't know, there's something about it. Like just riding our new giveaway bike that's going to go live and revving out to 14,500 RPM is always a good time.
It's special, that's for sure.
Yeah. We'll catch you on the next one. See you later. Well, look at you. You've made it to the end of another Yammy Noob video. You should consider yourself pretty lucky because I have curated this one right over here for you to continue watching. It's probably just as good as the one you just saw. Unless you hated the one you just saw. I don't know, maybe leave me a comment down below about how much you hated it as well too. Or just keep watching this one. Make sure you keep watching Yammy Noob. Don't forget to keep watching Yammy Noob. That's the most important thing. Keep watching Yammy Noob.